Hey guys, and welcome to the Fish Room. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and it's time for a species spotlight. This week we're going on a bit of a departure into a significantly larger fish than I generally talk about. The Farlowella catfish or the Twig catfish. Now, despite their relatively large size of about 6 inches, these guys are perfect for a community aquarium with lots of small tetras and cories. So let's take a look and I'll tell you a little more about them. At first glance, you may not even notice the fish that we're going to talk about today, and that's because they come by their name honestly. The Twig catfish, or Farlowella catfish, is an exceptionally interesting, at least in my mind, species of catfish that comes from swift-flowing streams of the Amazon, most specifically the Orinoco Basin. They hang out in the shallows where there's lots of marginal vegetation that provide cover and a pretty high oxygen content. Now, they tend to orient vertically or on any piece of decor in the aquarium. As you can see, they pretty much look like a stick. They are relatively sedentary, meaning they don't move a whole lot. This is basically what they do. That being said, they are really good algae eaters, especially for those softer, flatter algae that we find in the aquarium. Often juvenile Farlowella will even eat some of the hair algae. Now, despite their relatively large size of around 6 inches, these guys are really not suitable with a lot of the bigger cichlids because they're just so darn shy. Not shy in that they're not visible. Sometimes I like to jokingly refer to these guys as dumb as rocks because unless the food is literally in front of their face, they just don't eat it. In fact, during water changes, if you drop the water level below them when they're hanging on the glass, they often don't even move. For this reason, they're best, in my opinion at least, paired with things like small tetras, Coreodoris, other loricarids, or catfishes or plecos of a peaceful and comparable size. Now, I have a whole lot in this tank, and one of the reasons that I actually added these guys to this aquarium over another one. Now, one of the reasons I added these guys to this particular aquarium instead of some of the others is that the apple snails that are also found in this aquarium really provide ample grazing surfaces for this reserved species. I have them pretty much all over the aquarium. I just think that they are absolutely phenomenal fish. Now, they can be difficult to sex until they reach maturity, and reaching maturity with a lot of species of catfish can take a really long time. I'm talking years, folks, not months. Once they hit sexual maturity, usually I guess at about 2 years old, the males start getting substantially longer than the females, up to 1.5 inches longer. And they also have a much longer rostrum, that nose portion that extends. And not only that, but they'll get what are called odontoid scutes on their head, meaning they get little tiny hairs that stick out from the sides of their nose. And that's how you can definitively sex them. What's interesting is oftentimes many females will mate with a male at a time, and the ladies will lay their eggs in rows, generally in pairs, on the surface of the glass, most often in the front of the glass, which is super exciting for us as fish keepers. Now, as they're younger, they may only lay 8 or so eggs, but as they mature and reach about 3 years old, they'll lay up to about 30 eggs. Interestingly enough, the male will stay with these eggs, fanning them constantly, so the risk of fungus in these guys is really low. There's absolutely no predation by the parents, and the babies will hatch out into little long rostrum versions of their parents. Absolutely adorable. Now, these are a very challenging species to breed. But I think it's mainly because a lot of people give up before the fish gain maturity. All in all, these algae eaters are an absolutely fascinating, gorgeous, super unique fish to keep in your community aquarium. Now, I probably wouldn't recommend them for a small community aquarium. 30 gallons or larger would definitely be best. But with their lack of motility, as long as the tank is really mature, they should do just fine. These have got to be one of my favorite catfishes of all times. Now, I think it's important to mention that often these guys are imported under a ton of different names, and the most common species name they're imported under is one that is not often seen. The vast majority end up being Farlowella vittata, like these guys here. Again, just really, really cool fish, and if you have some patience, are a very worthy breeding project. Now, I also should mention that they can take a pretty nice range of parameters with temperatures all the way down to 70 and up to close to 80. They can take a wide range of pHs with an ideal being in that neutral range. They're relatively easy to feed, being largely omnivorous, so offering them a good range of off-walk style foods, which again is that sort of algae and microcrustacean stuff that grows on rocks in areas of flow, is a really great idea. If you get the opportunity, I highly recommend this cool catfish. As always, thanks so much for watching. Let me know below if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, and tell me what your favorite catfish is. Thanks again for the continued support of the donations, especially during last week's live chat. As always, make sure you stop by my Instagram, my Facebook, and my website, MsJenks.com, where you can see my upcoming speaking engagements, my current stock list, and information on all things nano.